Welcome, everyone, again to the Finding Elevation podcast. I have an interesting conversation for you today. So I'm speaking with Alejo Lazzati, who is an IFMGA-certified mountain guide, and he's guided for Mountain Madness for many years. He's from Quito, Ecuador, and has the coolest background. I often wonder what my life would have been like if I started climbing much earlier. In Alejo's case, he started climbing Cotopaxi when he was 14, and that just turned into a passion initially, and then really a calling to help others explore the mountains. So he went on to compete on a national stage representing Ecuador as a climber, and that period of time really sharpened his technical skills and taught him about mental resilience and sort of opened the door to understanding what the human body and mind are capable of when they're under pressure. He's climbed extensively personally and as a guide throughout Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, even the Alps, and has led expeditions in more demanding places like K2 and Denali. He just recently returned from Mount Everest, where he summited. He also, as if all of that wasn't enough, he at one point held the speed record on the west base of Huayna Potosi, which is a mountain in Bolivia. Very technical and committing route as well. He went on to achieve his IFMGA certification, which is a really big deal for a mountain guide. That's the highest standard of international certification that one can achieve. And while, of course, that was critical for him personally, he was the first Ecuadorian to receive that certification. And so that really opened the door for other Ecuadorians to pursue guiding as a career and to be certified as well. So welcome, Alejo. It's really great to have you here and to see you today.
Hello, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to have this conversation. And yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. We were talking a little bit earlier. Whenever someone reads my bio to me, it always sort of takes me back. What does it feel like for you when you hear all those accomplishments just stated back to back to back?
I think it's complex to have that perspective, of your own self. To see yourself from other eyes gives you perspective. And it's interesting to see the background and things that sometimes we don't have aware all the time. We don't have it present all the time.
Totally agree with that. And I think we don't often take a second to step back and look at all the things we've accomplished. I think we're so busy moving on to the next thing that we don't always pause and think about what it's taken to get us where we are today.
Yeah, definitely. That has something to do to be on this momentum, always moving, always doing stuff, always something new. So not much time to look back.
And in your case, you started climbing when you were 14. Which is sort of mind-boggling to me. If I think about what I was doing when I was 14, it was, nothing related to the mountains. What was the situation that put you on the top of Cotopaxi at such a young age?
Yeah, when I look and think back about it, it's interesting. We were just like these kids, amazed and fired up about going anywhere. And summiting Cotopaxi is something that is compromised. There's a few things in there that are delicate and people have accidents there and stuff like that. And also for me to look back, it was I was only 14 and climbing these things without knowing much, just with the will of doing it and the dream of coming back from the summit. But I got no idea. I got crampons for the first time and all the gear for the first time without knowing really what I was doing. But I was super excited about it. I was crampons look so cool. Everything looks so cool. And I was lucky to go through all these experiences with no accidents, with no big events. But that was the build-up of now I'm a big fan of technique and safety and risk management. All these topics are big for me. And to think now about Cotopaxi is a little bit that was a little bit reckless, You
shared this with me previously. I think it's a funny story. How did the climb itself come together?
I was on this climbing place that we used to go called El Rocódromo. And my friend Flavio comes to climb and his face was completely burned. I was like, hey, what happened to you? And he was like, oh, I climbed Cotopaxi yesterday. I was like, no way. Can you take me up there? And he was like, yes, give me 2 days to rest and we go. And literally that's what happened. He rested 2 days. Then we went. I borrowed gear from friends and got these rubber fishing boots and we made it up. We just made it up. I used to have this belt, this harness that was made out of a karate belt. We sent it to a shoemaker and he made this harness for us.
Holy cow. Okay, so you were wearing crampons and rubber fishing boots on the summit of Cotopaxi. And
Yeah, we got these strap crampons.
is that because the gear just wasn't available at that time in Ecuador, or what? And I mean, mountaineering is a very expensive sport, and I imagine if as a 14-year-old you didn't really have extra money sitting around for a new
Yeah, there
hobby.
was not much money or gear available, but some friends from I was like in the group of Boy Scouts, and one of the directors of Boy Scouts, he was a climber, and he was always lending me crampons. Like every time I was going, I knew like I can get the crampons from him. Like asking from one person one thing to other person other stuff.
Okay.
Like getting my socks from my aunt and just like fishing for gear all over on different places.
And I would imagine that first climb ignited something in you. Like there was a passion that was sparked that first time on Cotopaxi.
Absolutely. I remember I did it on a weekend and I went on Monday to the school and I was like super tired and my mind was like completely in the mountain, completely in the glacier still.
Do you know what it was that really drew you in even back then?
I don't know. It's hard to tell. I remember when I was a kid here going to school and seeing Cotopaxi from far away. Like early morning, like just on the bus stop, being very cold and being able to see Cotopaxi from far away. And I was like, I want to be there. Like they did always like just seeing the mountains from far away called my attention to go there.
Did your parents encourage you to climb, or it really was just
No,
you seeing this mountain out off in the distance and being curious about what it would be like to be up there?
I got nobody in my family that was a climber. I was maybe the first one, and I always liked nature in general. Like for me, being out, being just camping or being in the forest, I always got this need to be on nature. And one thing led to other, and here I am.
Here you are. From that first summit at Cotopaxi, I'm sure there were many more, but eventually you ended up competing for Ecuador as a climber. What was
Yeah,
that like?
I started rock climbing first, like rock climbing and like artificial wall climbing is what led me into mountaineering. And yeah, long story short, I was with Boy Scouts, and one day with Boy Scouts, we went to this rocódromo, to this climbing place to do some rappel. And that was the end of Boy Scouts for me. Then I just started going to this place to climb, to do bouldering. And we were not very much climbers in Ecuador. So the competitions were something very small. We were maybe 5 climbers here in Quito. And in other city, Cuenca, there were like 5 or 6 more. And we used to run these competitions like on a very familiar way, It was like very small family of climbers. And I was competing for Pichincha. I was doing pretty good for a while. I was a Vice Pan American champion.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. And how old were you when you did this, when you competed?
A ver, let me think. When I was competing hard, I was around 17, in between 16 and 21 years old.
Okay, so quite a while.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's been a few years.
It's been a few years. I imagine that really caused you to focus on technique in order to be a more proficient climber.
I was really an enthusiast of like the whole sport thing, like the technical steps where just a little hip movement can make you do the step or a little hip movement can take you out of the wall. Now I'm not much of a rock climber. I don't do it very often, but I enjoy it so much. I really like rock climbing and going back to it is always nice.
It's such a different way to move our bodies. I find I'm much more aware of my body's placement in space when I'm rock climbing as opposed to when I'm mountaineering. And
I think climbing is great for the brain. We are mammals. It makes the monkey happy brain.
yeah, right. Well, what was it like growing up in Ecuador? So you told us a little bit about it, but like, what is it? And for people who haven't been there, what makes it such a special place and such a great place to go climbing?
I think on Ecuador, what is something really nice is the proximity of nature. That we have like really nice national parks and natural areas really close around. Ecuador is a very tiny country, but it's huge on variety. So just driving a few hours, we could be on completely different environments. And the mountains here are everywhere. It's like you look around and 360 degrees around, there's always a mountain. And the proximity of places like here is been super easy always to go to the rivers, go to the rock climbing area, go to the mountains, go to a farmhouse. It's really accessible.
And that was one of the things that struck me the first time I climbed in Ecuador was that you could drive from Quito I don't know, 45 minutes maybe, and start climbing a 19,000 foot volcano and then come back to Quito or go to a beautiful hacienda for a couple of
Exactly.
days to rest and eat great food and then do this, drive 45 minutes in the other direction and climb a different volcano.
Exactly. Like there's not much places in the planet where you can go to 19,000 feet and the same night be on a nice hotel or in your house or on
Yeah.
civilization recovering.
Yeah.
Most places they require like 1 or 2 days to get back. Here is super
Yeah.
accessible.
I think I'm grateful that I didn't go to Ecuador early in my climbing career because I don't think I would have had the motivation to climb things like Denali or even peaks in the Cascades that are, at most 14,000 feet, but require you to carry 45 pounds and stay overnight. It's just much, much harder climbing than when it's so accessible.
Yeah, here is very, I call it very alpine, as we just drive, use like a day pack, climb, and we almost don't use tents here. There's a couple expeditions where we use tents, but in general, we always take advantage of the nice farmhouses, haciendas, and lodges,
Yeah.
which makes it very, very nice climbing in Ecuador.
Very nice. Everyone should go to Ecuador. But you spent a lot of time in another mountain that wasn't quite so comfortable, and that was Aconcagua. So you've summited that mountain, I think I read 25 times. And
Probably, yeah.
there's something I think that happens when you spend that much time in any type of nature, whether it's a trail or you're fishing or a mountain. I think you develop a really strong connection with that place. You get to see it change over time, which I think is very special. What was that like for you to be, to spend so many seasons and so much time on a mountain like Aconcagua?
I was thinking about Aconcagua now on the Everest climb, and it's so interesting because Aconcagua is definitely one of the nicest steps to going through long expedition climbing.
It is.
And yeah, I'm really grateful with the whole Aconcagua school, with the whole Aconcagua experience. That it's been a few there, it's been a lot of expeditions and a lot of summits, a few failures, but definitely Aconcagua has been a very big master on the steps for going into big mountains.
Yeah.
Aconcagua has been great.
What do you think are the things that people learn on Aconcagua that prepare them for a bigger expedition?
I think Aconcagua is giving you, like we were saying here in Ecuador, is so accessible. Everything is very alpine.
Yeah.
So in Aconcagua is the next step. It's like to plan your meals, to plan a 21 days or 19 days expedition. Makes you think a lot forward, makes you think more thorough into details, into little things, what to bring, what not to bring, the amounts of things, and also like to dosify your energy on a more smart way. As we do, like, let's say here in Ecuador, we go climbing Cotopaxi, it's up and down, it's couple days. It's a lot of mistakes that we can do that will be no problem. On a longer expedition, everything is a plus. Like I burned my face with the sun day one, or I cut my finger with a zipper here and there. All these little things are going to be part of the recipe. And the idea in Aconcagua is to be as fresh as possible.
Yeah, I find that Aconcagua is one of those mountains that is very often underestimated by people. They think that it's not technical, and so they maybe don't prepare or don't research as much as they should, and then are very quickly surprised when they get on that mountain.
Definitely. I think sometimes people talk about Aconcagua like too much people or like not being very nice. And I can see why people may say that. Sometimes the mountain is dusty, is having these conditions, and people doesn't like it. But personally, I love Aconcagua. I think Aconcagua is a super important and nice step of going up to the big mountains.
I think it's a good way to test yourself in an expedition setting, to start to practice self-care like you were talking about, and to test yourself at higher elevation in a non-technical setting just to see how you respond. And then that helps you decide what the next step for you is.
And Aconcagua can be very demanding. Aconcagua, the weather, the conditions, and the altitude is a challenging mountain for sure.
It's no joke at all. I agree. So you said that I want to talk about heuristics for a minute. I love this idea. And
Nice.
I, in the past 3 or so years, have really gotten into mindset and decision making and risk assessment. And I think those things are so important in the mountains. So maybe we'll start by talking about what heuristics What does it mean? And why is it important in the mountains?
As far as I understand, heuristic is one of the branch of psychology that studies human behavior
Mm-hmm.
and problem resolution. So my first learning with this was through avalanche research, like avalanche safety courses. It's been touching, like for me, it's been a topic that is very interesting and I think is crucial for climbers in general, but personally, I think this has been a topic that touches my life, touches something in my psychology that calls my attention, like all these group decision, all these things that happens that we are not aware, like things that happen sometimes on automatic mode. And yeah, for me, it's a passion, like to teach this on people and to talk about it. And somehow it's like an eye opening, it's like understanding something more further than the basics. And yeah, it's interesting how to see the groups changes behavior. And sometimes we fall into these traps so easily, like it's not like it and then it's not gonna happen to you. It's like it and it's gonna happen to you. Like all these traps are there and are things that happens just because we are humans.
What do you think some of the common traps are that you've seen people fall into?
I think it's common as we are on an activity that is physical, it's like when we are with adrenaline, we are with the whole drive of doing things, we can like not be aware of our stage of how we are feeling or like how euphoric we could be on a climb. But the idea is to be aware, like to understand, like, okay, now I'm having this behavior or these other things that influence, and to be aware of this, not judging, not fighting against it, but overall being aware of what's going on.
And I love that you said be aware, because I think sometimes people want to eliminate fear or eliminate discomfort. And I don't think those are necessarily realistic goals if you're a mountaineer or a climber. And so being able to like name those things and then incorporate them into your decision making, to me, is the key to being responsible, I think, in the mountains. But we first have to understand and acknowledge that they're there.
I love what you just said. There's a lot of things that are not comfortable or not the way that we like sometimes. And it's like these teachings, of like, okay, if I'm scared, I'm going to do it scared.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to consider that being scared is limiting some of my abilities, and to understand like the process is not always ideal, and the brain is always trying to survive, to
Yeah.
make us stay alive. And
Yeah.
sometimes the brain is like, no, why would you do that? And to be present on this process, I think is beautiful.
Did you study the sort of risk taking and assessment, or how did you become interested, and how did you then start to study and learn more about it?
I studied some risk assessment like on my guiding career, and then took a couple courses like by my side. I've been directing the rescue team of the Guiding Association of Ecuador for a few years. And it's always been a passion for me, like to understand all these things. And somehow I think is a way for me, for my brain to keep me alive, like I have this
Right.
passion for going out, and also like the same brain is trying to keep it sane, like a saying that I have is like, not even a broken nail is worth it. The idea is to climb Everest, climb Denali, climb very technical routes, and not even a broken nail is worth it.
Yeah.
Like ideally, we don't want to have like burnt face or a cut finger. People die doing this every
Or a
year.
blister.
Exactly. And I have this saying that I tell to clients a lot, like, not even a broken nail is worth it. The
Right.
idea is to do it up complete and down complete.
Yeah. Cleanly. What are other tips that you teach clients about slowing down their decision making or being more present in the moment and really evaluating what's going on around them?
I think the activity itself, like the mountain
Mm-hmm.
itself, teaches a lot people. And sometimes we are the providers of safety just watching. A lot of times, like we need to say something, like to tell people, hey, slow down or this and that.
Yeah.
But with the years, seeing how the speech is less effective. Like I can say so many things, but the mountain itself is going to let you know, like the times, the process. It's something that everybody learns its own way, I would say.
So I love what you said, because the mountain really is in charge. And I think that we develop relationships with the wild places that we spend time in, and certainly with mountains. And I think that when people just personally, it doesn't make sense to me when someone says that they conquered a mountain, or when someone approaches a climb thinking that they're sort of in control of the situation and able to dictate the schedule or the outcomes, because that's not how nature works. And I think we have a much easier time when we realize that it's the mountain that's in charge, and we are fortunate to be there. And part of our job is to respect the mountain and to listen to it and to use what the mountain is telling us to make decisions about whatever our goal is.
I think people come with a lot of energy and a lot of motivation sometimes to the mountain. And it's like, I heard like in Everest, like, oh, we have to have this mentality that we're going to summit. So we are going to summit. But in the other hand, I like calling it always an attempt, because one way we don't know if we're going to make it or not.
Yeah.
But it's to have this balance, like I think it's a long process of a lot of mountains and a lot of summits and a lot of failures to understand this. And people come, like I was saying, with this motivation of we can do it, let's do it. But then at the end, the mountain is like the one that is giving and dictating all the steps to us, It's like, I don't know exactly how weather is going to be. I don't know how conditions exactly are going to be. And all these things is what I have to be aware to take my decisions of what to do or what not to do in certain moments.
Totally agree. Is there a particular decision that you made on a mountain that sticks with you, that you're maybe proud of, or that you really learned from?
I think when we decide not to climb, and people is like discussing our decision, because they pay the money, they are there, the condition maybe look good. And with years, I learned like not to regret about my decision. Like so many times, like it's like, okay, we have to turn around and this is it. And sometimes it's like why? It's like, I want to go up too. And we want to take people up. But sometimes the conditions is not nice, is a no-go, and that is painful for everybody. But I think with years, I feel even proud of taking these decisions, of saying like, no, this is not the day, now is not the moment. And it's something that the mountain is saying, I'm just transmitting it.
Oh my gosh, yes. I love that you framed it that way. Because you really are just listening to what the mountain's telling you. And
exactly.
You're
we are
that.
Just like a connection with the elements and being helpful to the group to take safety decisions. But all is based on the mountains. All is based on these heuristics of the terrain, the weather, and the human factor.
I'm going to remember that. That's a really good way, I think, to think about it, and really like captures what's actually the dynamic that's actually happening on a mountain.
I think mountaineering is such a beautiful activity because it teaches this, that no other environment is going to give this to humans. Like we live into this developed world in the cities, with machines, with computers, with all these processes. Somehow everything becomes imaginary. Everything becomes like something that is being developed. But in the mountain, the wind is real, the temperature is real. Like we get in contact with something that is very, very real, and it can kill us.
Yeah.
So somehow it's like a reality check thing, It's like, no, the mountains put you there like, hey, you cannot mess around like having a frostbite or getting sick with altitude. Like it puts the limit and somehow makes us real.
Do you think that realness, especially in contrast to most of our lives every day, is what draws us back to the mountains?
Probably. At least in my case, that is something that I appreciate a lot of the mountains. It's like everything becomes simpler and makes sense. It's not so many small variabilities of things or emotional things. In there is like, no, sometimes it's black or white. Sometimes it's like, it's very real. Yeah.
And I think for me, that's a really good counterbalance to everything else in my life. I want that connection with something that's real, and I want to be able to spend time and really reset in a place that reminds me what's really important.
And I think it takes time to people to go out, to have all these experiences and to go through the soap opera of mountaineering, to go through to have friends that die, going through these whole things that, hey, is real. Like people get injured, people die, and like it's no joke. And the idea for me is always go to enjoy and do the best in the mountains. We are so privileged to have the chance to go out. Most people, even having the money, a lot of people is not interested in heading out. And for us, it's like we have the chance to go. And it's amazing to be into this process. And sometimes I think it's like back and forward with these things. Sometimes like I see person climbing with me, like I see them on a process that is alike to me, that reminds me of me. And then at the end, I get a huge teaching on these people. It's like, wow, maybe it's like nothing is written. Like I cannot judge anybody. I know nothing. Like all I know is like going to these places and taking care of myself, taking care of people. And every experience is different because every person is different. Plus, we are different every day.
Yeah.
So, like going to the same mountain over and over, like we were saying before, Cotopaxi is a mountain that I have climbed so many times. People ask me, like, it's not that boring. And I'm like, no, it's so nice to go back because I see the changes of the place and see the changes of myself, see how I've been changing since I've been going there.
It's maybe an obvious question, but what do you think? Obviously, you've gotten older, but if you think about Cotopaxi and the first time you summited, what's been the biggest change since then?
On the mountain, you mean, or on
just
myself?
in you, yeah. Or maybe both.
Yeah, I think they reflect with each other and they are connected. Like the mountain physically has changed a lot. Like all the glacier is retreated. The geography of the mountain has changed a lot. Like the shape of the summit, if you see it from the air, it's been moving and shaping and changing shape every year. And then for me, like since I summited Cotopaxi for the first time, it's interesting to look back and to see all the experiences. I've been growing myself and all the things I thought I knew and maybe I didn't, And yeah, definitely it's a retrospective of feelings of everything.
I think when we're younger, we think that we know. And then we get older, we realize that we don't. For a while, that's frustrating. And then that, to me, becomes exciting, that there's all these things that I don't know and I get to learn and explore and I get to incorporate them into who I am.
Yeah, that's part of the process for sure.
Right.
Humbling.
Speaking of humbling, you just got back from Everest. Congratulations again on your summit. What day did you summit?
Thank you so much. We summited on
So a month ago.
Yeah, exactly. It's been 1 month and 1 day ago.
Yeah. So many questions to ask you. We'll start with this. What was it that drew you to climbing Mount Everest?
I think it's been a dream my whole life. As a mountaineer, as a climber, just the name of Everest is something that calls everybody's attention. Being the tallest mountain in the world, it's always like just the name is something that calls attention. And that was always on my bucket list. Like always thinking I would love to go there and do it.
And I'm sure you studied the mountain, you spoke to other people who summited, you had an idea of what it was like. How was that idea different from what you experienced when you were there?
That is such a nice question. Since I was a kid, I always look at maps and pictures and this and that, to have an idea of how is it being there. And then you are there and it's not how you imagine, right? It's a completely other thing. I think it was tougher than I expected.
Okay.
Like in my mind, I was thinking somehow it was like not as dramatic,
Really?
like the real deal, is like in Camp 4, the person that was next to our tent passed away. And yeah, when you hear that on a movie or something, it's way different when you are really in there, and like we are going through the route nearby the summit. And there's this body from an Indian guy, and he is connected to the new line. Like I see the gate is new, and this is something like this is. And then we ask, and he's a guy that passed out the day before we were climbing. And like we were saying before, like getting to this thing that is real, to having this realness in front of your face of people taking the wrong decisions, like taking all the bad things going through and paying the consequences of it, like frostbite, losing limbs. I don't know. It's like, wow. It's like, it's definitely super challenging mountain. It takes a lot. Like for me, a lot of people were asking me like, how you prepared for Everest? And of course, I was going to the gym and preparing a few months before, but my mind was going more like I prepared my whole life. Like we were saying before, when I was 14 years old and I was into technical stuff, like I was preparing for Everest in there, like how I put a carabiner, how the carabiner works on this position or other position or different type of rope. All these little things, all the understanding of these little things, I think it count a lot on Everest. And definitely, I think is challenging. It takes a lot. Like it's no joke. It's a mountain that we need to be prepared, not only physically, but mentally, spiritually. And a lot of things need to happen according to be able to reach the summit on a logical way, not being reckless, not doing stupid things, being respectful. And yeah, it's definitely a challenging climb.
Do you think it's the hardest mountain you've climbed?
I don't think it's the hardest route itself. I think I've been into situations that is more compromised. Overall, technically, as Everest is all fixed lines, and I think for Everest is like you need to be efficient on this sport itself that is fixed lines. Like to be able to rappel and move with the Jumar and all that. That's a skill, and being connected to that is important. And that takes out the value of alpine climbing. If you and I are climbing Everest with a 50-meter ropes, putting our anchors and taking all the decisions pitch by pitch is completely different achievement, like Everest, I think in terms to altitude and conditions, it's been the hardest I done. Like on Camp 4, the wind was roaring. The wind was insane bad. Like it was breaking tents and taking like tents were rolling with people inside. And it's like in that way it's definitely one of the most adverse environments I've been.
How do you think being on Everest has changed how you guide? Are there things from that climb that you'll take with you and maybe do differently?
I think overall it's reaffirmed. And I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but like it's been like a reaffirmation of all these theoretical stuff. Like on the academia, like all these things of teaching guides, we go into these principles and sometimes they just feel like theory, and then going to the field and seeing how important is these things, like seeing how all these little decision taking and respectful things are important to a safe climb. It's been like a reaffirmation to say like, yes, like this is the way we should go through a process step by step, carefully. And yeah, I think it's been like that.
And listen to the mountain. I feel like Everest is maybe any Himalayan peak. It becomes even more important to really listen to the mountain and to pay attention to what it's telling you.
Yeah, I think in there is where the most of everything counts. Like if you know how to do a knot, if you know how to do your rhythm, if you know how to eat and drink and keep yourself in good shape, it's a plus of so many little factors.
I agree with that. I know that your summit of Everest is still sinking in. Do you know yet what you'll take from it personally, what it will mean to you, say, in 5 years or 10 years?
Yeah, I think it's one more of these bricks of the wall of my career.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful part of it. And I'm really excited, like, to keep on going, keep on climbing there and keep on taking people. I like being connected with the whole process of people going up to the mountain, like people that doesn't know themselves and they are like just looking for themselves through mountaineering, and to start until you can say, okay, with this person, we are ready for Everest now. Like we are ready to do an attempt on Everest.
It's one of the special things for me in my work as well, especially because I often get to work with someone who needs coaching or some kind of preparation for a climb. And so through Alpine Athletics, I get to work with them to get prepared and to learn about the mountain and to build their confidence and become more mentally resilient. And then now with Mountain Menace, I get to see that actually play out in real time on the mountain. And it's so special to me to work with people who, at the beginning maybe lacked some confidence or they were unsure, but they had this idea that they were capable of something and they just needed some coaching and guidance and confidence building. And then to see that actually play out into a summit or whatever success means to them is really special. That's really what keeps me doing this every day.
I think humans, we are designed to work on a tribe or something. We are designed like to do these interactions between each other. And mountaineering is such a beautiful thing for that because it teaches it, like the mountain is the teacher and we are ourselves our teachers. And to go to this process, where somebody's looking for something and to go to the process where they find it, even when they don't know exactly what is it, but they are into this line, of understanding. I think a lot of this is somehow like a spiritual path. And it's a lot of stuff that we cannot explain into words, but it's beautiful, like this human interaction, like to go all together, look for a goal. And somehow it's amazing that it's an activity where we can lose our lives, it's a serious thing. Like it's no joke. Like this is a very special activity. And I enjoy a lot, like what you said before, like to see people through the process. And these times when the success of somebody else feels as good as our own success, it's like when you are connected with somebody, their struggles, their process. And then when we reach a summit, understanding the whole story, it means a lot more.
It totally does. So you'll be guiding for Mountain Madness on Everest next year in 2027. So you will have that opportunity to see this, group of individuals who aspire to climb Everest and to really play a role in helping them achieve their goal. And I think, it's true on any mountain, but I think it's especially true, that feeling of satisfaction that we get as someone that enables that. It's even more poignant when it's a big peak like Everest.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's so many factors and so many people around it. Everest is like this huge expedition where, I don't know, there's people organizing things a month before we arrive there.
Right. They're building base camp, they're getting the platform set up, they're putting the rest of the ice fall. I'm always amazed at the amount of work that goes into, and humbled, I think, by the amount of work and effort that people put into getting things ready for us to climb.
I think that's a beautiful feeling. When we get humbled, I think it generally is connected with understanding more, to having more factors that makes us like, oh, I realize about this that I didn't realize before.
Right.
Yeah, like the more humble we are, somehow is connecting us with the more we see, the more we understand about things.
Well, let's talk a little bit about IFMGA and that certification. You were the first Ecuadorian, and the first woman is a good friend of both of ours, Juliana Garcia.
Juliana,
Climbing
yes.
with in a few months. You guys are some of my favorite people. Talk a little bit about that certification. Well, I think that certification, it means more, I think, like in the Alps, for example. I feel like guiding is really a profession and a career, and we're not quite at that level yet in the United States or in North America. And so that certification is very important, and it's not easy to get, very costly. So just sort of walk us through what it means and what it takes to achieve it.
Thanks for that question. IFMGA sometimes is very controversial for people, and it's complex because it's something that is connecting the whole world.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, like in France or Europe, is something that is part of the picture all the time. And let's say in the US, IFMGA is not being as present as in other countries. So this has like some ways how the industry develops. For me, IFMGA somehow at the end is just a license to do something. It's like you want to drive your car, you need to have a driving license. You want to fly your paraglider, you need to have your pilot license. Somehow, if you want to be a mountain guide, you need to have this IFMGA certification. But what is complex in there is that there's so many terrains around the world and so many particularities of the mountain ranges that make the work different. So it's different guiding in Chamonix than guiding in Bolivia, Peru, or guiding in the Cascades in the US. But the common point that I see with the certification is somehow going through the technical part to have your certification, is going through all the processes and all the problems you may have. Somehow, I don't know, you want to be a cook, you need to go to cook school. You want to be an architect, you need to go to architecture school. But then in the US, how the industry has been developing, the companies are been having people that are available and capable to do these jobs. And as there's no regulation or anything, the activity just happens. But somehow I like to read the manual. I like to understand like the things of, I don't know, if I buy a complex device, it's very useful to learn the owner's manual. And as a guide, even if you've been a climber your whole life and you come and do an IFMGA course for guiding with us, you're going to learn a lot of stuff. You're going to like get a lot of hints and a lot of things that are super valuable. But yeah, it's like I was thinking also, is this balance in between theory and practice? If you do only theory, it's useless. If you do practice without theory, it's dangerous. So I think it's something very useful to have for guides, IFMGA. But in the other hand, there's very many guides and people with a lot of experience that they don't have IFMGA and they are great. But I like people taking courses and talking about things and doing this as a tribe, doing this as a group, So then you feel more confident coming from a group of people, not only from your own experience.
Right. I think it helps to it does what it's meant to do, is set a standard. So we know if someone has achieved that level of certification and they have this amount of knowledge in different disciplines and an awareness of how to navigate and climb safely in that kind of terrain. And
That's
I
a key word.
I hope that in the US we start to require it more and more. We'll see. You also have been very involved in rescue and avalanche safety. How has that changed, or has it changed how you guide?
The avalanche research and safety is something that we've been developing with Juliana for a while. Like we've both been very excited about our personal performance into these topics. And also we have here in South America, we have IFMGA with no ski.
That's right.
And all the safety information about avalanches is into the ski course. And that has been a process that we've been talking here with the instructors of IFMGA. Like we are including this. Now this is part of the academia of guides without ski. Before it wasn't. That was leaving a void, a very bad void into the professions of people, like going into field where you can have avalanches and not having the courses about it.
That's a big deal.
For me, it's been a long process and it's been a lot of learning through into this. A lot of times we go into avalanche terrain just without knowing, and until we know like how close we were to wake up the mad bear or the huge dragon, like we were this close to have a big accident and we don't realize like how bad for me or other people can be. And definitely the whole avalanche education is something that is made stronger my decision taking. And sometimes it's like a no-go where other people is going. And sometimes it's been hard, It's like, oh, like theory says it's a no-go. We can have an avalanche, it's a no-go. And people go up, go down, and they are okay. Nothing happened. Right. And people will be like, hey, you turn around because like this and that, And it's a process of this waking up, I would say, on mountaineering, of understanding and not just climbing the mountain like a runner, like doing mountaineering with something else, having somehow like a little meditation or a little introspective as we go up and taking the activity the full, taking the most that we can out of the activity.
Which I think requires being really present and aware. And that to me is a big part of assessing terrain, right? To make sure that you're really honestly aware, assessing what's real and what's dangerous.
Yeah, sometimes we fall into ego or energetic stuff or too much energy.
Yeah.
And it's easy to see that. And it takes practice. It takes a lot of exercise like to understand this. People sometimes think it's like judging or like being too academical. But I think in the snow, there is something very magical about how water behaves when it's frozen. It's very complex. And the science of it, as we start digging into it, is endless. Like we end into spaces in there that is hard to explain.
And we take it for granted, I think, also. Especially if we, I grew up in a place that was snowy in the wintertime, and I didn't think about snow in terms of its complexity or how it changes or the different characteristics that it might have depending on the environment.
Yeah, that is interesting. That calls my attention, like to be aware and to be present, like to be grateful and be present in the field and don't let the mind just play with fear and warnings and things, like let your mind say stuff, but not be present in there.
Right.
Like being present into these other fields.
I want to go back to Everest for a second. So if Everest is on their radar for next year or even beyond, what do you think are the most important things for them to be thinking about now to make sure that they're ready?
I think to be active, to be out in the mountains, to be open-minded, to learn new things, to learn new tricks, be in the mountains, be training, go to the gym and be open. It requires like this dynamic way of being, like to be open, to be ready. I call it sometimes expedition behavior.
Okay.
Like to be ready to changes, to be aware of things, to be humble and to work hard, like giving all you can and learning how to put the energy on the right bucket.
Yeah. What does that mean to you? Putting the energy in the right bucket?
Sometimes I stress and I start like putting energy in places that it's just a waste of energy. And it's like to know the homework well, like to know what you have to do and do it.
Yep.
It helps a lot. Like when I get this information from my trainer and he's like, okay, this week you're going to do this and this and this and this and this and that and start doing it, like, and then the brain would be like, what if this, what if that? But just like get a plan, stick to the plan and go with the flow.
I'm writing this down. Put your energy in the right bucket. It's a good reminder.
A lot of times we have so much energy, but we are putting it on a place that is not useful.
Or even detrimental.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, I want to wrap up with a couple of quick questions about gear and food in the mountains. So, what is your favorite piece of gear that you cannot live without when you're climbing?
Oh, you said that, and it came my gloves, my guide gloves, right away to my head.
Okay.
Like being comfortable on hands, being comfortable everywhere is really, really important.
When you say guide gloves, are those Black Diamond guide gloves or a different brand?
Yeah, the Black Diamond
Yeah.
guide gloves. And yeah, having your hands comfortable is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And a piece of gear that I use a lot is the buff.
Oh, yeah. So versatile.
If I don't have a buff, I feel uncomfortable. That's a piece of gear that is important for me.
You use it probably to cover your nose and mouth, to shield yourself from sun. How
Yeah,
else do you use
generally I
it?
use two. I use one in my head as a hat and one in my neck, like forehead and ears and everything. And then I move it around on different
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
But
Super
if
functional.
I don't have two buffs, I'm like, I need my buffs.
Okay. Well, make sure you have some buffs for Everest. But what about food? To me, snacks are a big reason for climbing. What's your favorite thing to eat on the mountain?
Personally, for climbs, I like having a sandwich.
Just a
You know, like
sandwich?
a ham and cheese sandwich is something that I like a lot. But it's not very handy. You know, a lot of times it smashes or it freezes. I like having like a little sandwich, then some gels or some bars.
Okay.
Some candy for the throat, and that's it. Generally, I don't eat much on the climbs, and I'm like pushing people like, hey, every hour we have to stop and have a bite of something. Like you don't need to finish your bar, but you need to have a bite to keep the glucose even.
A ham and cheese sandwich. Okay, good to know. Well, anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Not that I think now.
Okay. Well, this has been really fun chatting with you. I love that we sort of got into the spiritual side of the mountains and nature because for me, that's just so important. And I think it brings your experience to another level when you're able to connect that way. So it's fun talking to you about it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to do it again sometime.
Yes, we will. Thanks, Alejo.